Let us begin with the fundamental contradiction of your worldview, the worship of personal responsibility within an inherently unequal structure. Capitalism presents inequality as natural, even virtuous. But how can a child born in the slums of La Paz compete with one born in Kensington? No sermon on merit can reconcile that hypocrisy.
You confuse inequality of outcome with injustice. Inequality is not a crime, stagnation is. In a free society, people must be allowed to rise and, yes, to fall. I refuse to apologize for success, nor will I demonize those who seize opportunity. My Britain enabled the son of a grocer to lead the nation. That is the fruit of liberty, not privilege.
But your liberty is selective, liberty to exploit, to own, to hoard. What of the liberty of the landless farmer in Guatemala or the unemployed miner in Wales? You preach opportunity while kneecapping the very tools, unions, public education, healthcare, that level the playing field.
Leveling the playing field does not mean flattening society. When the state becomes the arbiter of equity, it becomes the master of fate. That is a soft tyranny. I dismantle dependency because it erodes character. True human dignity comes not from the state's largesse, but from one's own labor, effort, and risk.
Risk? Tell that to the children who die from preventable diseases because their parents can't pay. The so-called dignity of self-reliance is a convenient myth for the comfortable. A socialist society provides dignity not through sermons, but through solidarity, healthcare, housing, education for all, not as charity but as a right.
And yet your revolutions produce bureaucracies that ration rights and silence dissent. State monopolies on compassion are no better than corporate monopolies on power. My reforms did not crush public services, they returned them to the people. Property ownership, financial independence, those are the true social contracts.
But you confuse ownership with liberation. The worker doesn't want to rent dignity, he wants to reclaim power. Revolutionary socialism is not about handouts. It is about transforming production itself, workers owning factories, peasants owning the land, not through shares, but through collective control.
You romanticize the working class, but you infantilize it. You see people only as victims, never as agents. That is the arrogance of revolutionaries. You speak of liberation, but you strip the individual of responsibility and pride.
You misunderstand. We see workers as historical subjects, not isolated atoms. The capitalist model atomizes human beings, commodifies their labor, and sells them dreams. We organize not to replace pride, but to collectivize it, to build a world where pride is not a luxury.
You say atomize, I say empower. A shopkeeper who opens her store, a truck driver who builds a business. That is freedom. The market, with all its imperfections, reflects human choice. Central planning kills that spirit, that spontaneity.
And what does the market reflect? Profit over need, demand distorted by advertising, supply determined by speculation. The baker may be free to open a shop, but if wheat prices are controlled by hedge funds in New York, what is that freedom worth?
That is why we built financial institutions governed by law, not dogma. Markets need rules, not chains. You propose to eliminate profit, and with it, incentive. But even in your Cuba, black markets emerge. Human nature resists coercion.
What you call human nature is shaped by systems. Capitalism rewards greed and punishes cooperation. Socialism is not coercion, it is education, transformation. Under Guevara's ethics, man does not work for individual gain, but for collective purpose. That is the new human being we must forge.
A noble fiction, but fiction nonetheless. We saw the result of that fantasy: gulags, breadlines, failed economies. Your new man is a ghost that justifies the erosion of freedom. I dealt in the real world: inflation, interest rates, privatization, all messy but effective. You offered utopia. I delivered results.
Your results were temporary booms atop long-term decay. You sold off national assets, broke unions, and widened the gap between rich and poor. I offered struggle, yes, but also meaning. I do not apologize for seeking a world that is just, even if that road is steep.
You took up arms. I took up ballots. That difference defines us. Democracy, even flawed, is preferable to revolution. Reforms can be won through debate, not detonation.
In the abstract, perhaps, but in the colonized world, reform was a mirage. Guatemala's democratic socialist president was overthrown by a CIA coup. Chile's Allende was bombed in his palace. The ballot is sacred only when the imperialists allow it.
We supported liberty, not coups. If the West faltered, it was to prevent worse: Soviet satellites, repression, misery. The Soviet Union didn't liberate nations, it occupied them.
I opposed the USSR when it betrayed revolution. I supported Cuba, Angola, Bolivia, because these were not Soviet colonies. They were battlegrounds of emancipation. The violence I endorsed was not for conquest, but for liberation. How many African, Asian, or Latin American movements succeeded without arms?
You cannot cleanse blood with rhetoric. Revolution creates power vacuums and income tyrants. Look at Zimbabwe, Cambodia, Venezuela. I empowered civil society. You empowered warlords.
You mistake correlation for causation. Tyranny thrives in failed capitalist states too. Chile under Pinochet, apartheid South Africa, Suharto's Indonesia, all backed by your allies. If we must fight, it is because power concedes nothing without a fight. The British Empire drew borders in blood, extracted resources, and replaced cultures with commerce. You may have worn pearls, but the hands behind your legacy carried chains. Anti-imperialism is not hate, it is historical accountability.
We were not conquerors alone. We were builders. We left behind railways, courts, education systems, and we defended our own people. In the Falklands, we stood our ground. Patriotism is not a sin.
Education for whom? Justice for which class? Railways that carried raw materials to ports, not students to schools. Colonialism is not redeemed by infrastructure. Your nationalism masks class war. The empire was for the few, not the many.
We decolonized peacefully across much of the world. I led Britain during a time of national uncertainty and restored confidence. National pride is not about exclusion. It is about identity, order, continuity.
National pride, when paired with economic coercion, becomes imperialism. The IMF, the pound, the gunboat, different tools of the same empire. Latin America knows Britain not for its manners, but for its monopolies.
Planning breeds paralysis. The USSR collapsed under its own weight. Markets adapt, plan, and innovate every day, not by decree, but by millions of people making choices. That is dynamism.
Dynamism without direction is chaos. Planning is not about dictating toothbrush colors. It is about making sure everyone has one. Free markets left Africa impoverished and Detroit abandoned. Is that your model of success?
It's better than 5-year plans and famines. Markets allow failure, yes, but also learning. Central planning enshrines mistakes. I trusted people to find value. You trusted committees to impose it.
You trusted capital. I trusted people. Committees can correct, markets amplify. When profit drives every decision, morality disappears. Planning allows us to ask, does this serve the common good, not just the bottom line? I do not glorify violence, I recognize its necessity. A starving child suffers greater violence from indifference than from revolution. History is violent. The question is, who wields it and for whom?
The market is not indifferent. It reflects needs. My policies did not kill, they disciplined. Self-interest is not a sin, it is a signal. When everyone acts to better their own life, society flourishes.
When everyone acts for themselves, society fractures. Revolution says your fate is bound to mine. Capitalism says survive if you can. That is moral cowardice, not realism.
And your revolution says submit or be re-educated. That is not moral courage. That is tyranny in the name of equality. I gave people freedom. You gave them commands.
Oh, I died with a rifle in my hand and I regret nothing. My cause was not perfect, but it was just. I did not fight for comfort. I fought for consciousness. Let history remember that.
And I governed with a handbag and unyielding will. My country was transformed from decline to renewal. I did not promise utopia. I defended liberty. History will render its verdict.